What if the most painful sound in her life was the silence you left behind? What if your absence speaks louder than every word you ever said? And what if that silence is the very thing that's destroying her soul? Welcome to Stoic Bridge, the bridge between ancient wisdom and modern life, guiding you through life's storms with calm and resilience. It's not your words she remembers, not the late-night confessions, the desperate texts, or the endless apologies. It's the exact moment your presence vanished, when you stopped explaining, when your energy slipped away without warning. That's when something inside her shifted. Her soul began to ache, and she couldn't even explain why. You thought the heartbreak was losing her. But no, the real tragedy was believing her approval defined your value. You were conditioned to chase, to prove, to fix, and all the while she stood still, watching you unravel. Now here you are, alone, wondering, was my silence a sign of weakness or an act of power? Let me tell you something that's difficult to accept but essential to understand. Silence, when it comes from a place of strength, not spite, is the loudest, most undeniable message you can ever send. Stoicism doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop betraying yourself in order to make someone else feel whole. That's the line between the wounded boy and the man who has reclaimed his power. This is the story of that man, a man shattered by love but rebuilt through detachment. He doesn't yell, he doesn't beg, he doesn't chase. He simply goes quiet, and in that silence he becomes something she can't forget. A ghost, a mystery, a presence she now feels in every absence, because when silence is pure, it's radioactive. It lingers, it haunts, it burns. So if you're done being the emotional punching bag, if you're ready to shift from broken to untouchable, then stay with me, because everything changes from here. 1. The break didn't break you, it shattered the illusion. Sometimes it's not the fall that hurts the most, it's the sudden realization that you were never standing on solid ground to begin with. You thought the relationship ended when she walked away, but in truth something far more profound happened. It wasn't your heart that broke, it was the illusion. You didn't lose the love of your life. You lost the lie you were telling yourself, the story you clung to like a lifeline, that she was the one. That if you just loved her harder, held on longer, proved yourself enough, she'd finally see your worth. But that version of her, it never truly existed. She was never the savior, never the soulmate, only a projection of your deepest hopes and fears. And when that mask slipped, when reality crashed through the fantasy, you weren't left with heartbreak. You were left with something rarer and far more painful. Clarity. The kind of clarity that keeps you awake at night. The kind that burns through every excuse you made for her and every way you betrayed yourself just to keep her close. But here's the Stoic truth. Pain is a purifying fire. It doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. And what you're feeling now isn't weakness. It's the death of a dream that was never rooted in truth. It hurts, yes, because truth always does it first. But pain is also a teacher. It strips away the noise. It forces you to confront what you couldn't see before. And for the first time, you're not confused. You're awake. So what if her leaving didn't mean you weren't enough? What if it meant you were finally being freed from your own blindness? What if this pain is not the ending, but the long overdue beginning? The beginning of a version of you that no longer accepts half love, mixed signals, and emotional breadcrumbs. Let her go, not out of anger and not out of ego, but out of wisdom. You needed that illusion once, but now you know better. And that's where real strength begins. Not when you try to fix something broken, but when you finally walk away from something that was never whole in the first place. And once you do that, you unlock the next truth, one that most never dare to embrace. Number 2, you owe her nothing, not even closure. Imagine giving someone the match they used to burn your house down just so they could feel warm. That's what chasing closure often looks like. We convince ourselves it's about peace, but most of the time it's just a desperate attempt to stay connected, to keep a door open that was never meant for us. Let's be clear, you don't owe her a thing. Not an explanation, not a final text, not even the illusion of closure. Stop telling yourself she's confused. Stop imagining she's sitting somewhere, riddled with guilt, unsure of how to explain herself. She's not. She knew exactly what she was doing when she stopped replying, when she slowly backed away, when she ghosted you without warning. That wasn't hesitation. That wasn't emotional chaos. That was a choice, a calculated one. And deep down, she was counting on you being too wounded, too hopeful, too kind to call it what it truly was. Here's the harsh truth. Closure is a trap. It disguises itself as healing, but in reality, it's a quiet plea for permission to finally let go. But you don't need her permission. What you need are boundaries. What you need is discipline. And above all, you need to understand one of the darkest truths of emotional manipulation. The one who seeks closure gives away control. When someone walks away without giving you answers, they're not confused. They're creating a vacuum, one they expect you to fill with longing, questions, and broken pieces of yourself. They want you to chase meaning so they can stay in power without ever lifting a finger. But you're done playing that game. You no longer send just checking in texts. You don't post cryptic Instagram stories hoping she'll notice. You're not broadcasting your pain for her validation, because that's what she expects. That's what most men do. But you're not most men. Stoicism teaches this. You don't need to narrate your pain for it to be real. Let her wonder. Let her sit in the deafening silence where your energy used to be. Let her confront the absence of the man who once poured his heart out just to keep her engaged. Do you want her to feel the consequences of walking away from you? Then don't say a word. Don't act. Don't prove. Let your silence be the wall she crashes into every time she tries to justify her actions. Because when she finally reaches out, and she will, it won't be for closure. And it'll be because the mirror you left behind started reflecting back things she never wanted to see. You don't owe her a final conversation. You don't owe her your forgiveness. Not until you're ready. And most importantly, you absolutely do not owe her another piece of your soul, just so she can sleep better at night. Now, once you reclaim your power by not chasing closure, something strange happens. Your silence begins to echo louder than any apology ever could. 3. Your absence echoes louder than words. Sometimes silence is louder than a scream. It creeps in at midnight when the world is quiet and distractions fade, leaving only one thing behind: thought. And that's when your absence begins to speak. Not in noise, but in echoes. She won't remember the 100 texts you sent. She won't replay your voice notes, no matter how heartfelt they were. She's forgotten the specifics of every apology, every plea, every attempt you made to patch things up. But your silence, that stays. It lingers like a ghost in the room, whispering truths she tried to avoid. Because when your voice disappears, something else rises in its place. Her own conscience. You see, most men don't realize this. Women don't regret the ones who begged. They regret the ones who vanished, the ones who walked away without a scene, without a fight, without needing to be understood. The ones who refused to give them what they expected: drama, chaos, reaction. Instead, you left her with stillness. And that stillness is unsettling. It forces her to sit with the consequences of her own actions without your noise to drown out her inner voice. Here's what dark psychology teaches us. The human brain hates uncertainty. When a gap forms, it rushes to fill it with fear, with questions, with imagined endings. So when you go silent, her mind gets loud. Is he moving on? Has he met someone else? Is he done with me for good? That mental loop doesn't end because now you've become a puzzle she can't solve, and nothing pulls at the mind like a mystery it used to control. You don't need to block her. You don't need to announce your departure. You simply vanish. Calm, cold, and composed. That's what haunts her. Not your anger, not your pain, but the quiet, undeniable truth that you don't need to be heard anymore. You no longer crave validation. You no longer explain your value to someone who ignored it when it mattered most. This is the essence of Stoic detachment. It's not apathy. It's power, rooted in restraint. You've stopped leaking energy into a story that no longer deserves your presence. Because sometimes what your presence couldn't do, your absence finally does. And once she feels that silence, the next question begins to haunt her. Why doesn't she miss you? And the answer, because you never truly disappeared. Tathara 4. She can't miss you if you never truly disappeared. Picture this. A man stands at the edge of a stage, performing for an audience that no longer claps. He stays there night after night, hoping she'll return, hoping she'll notice, but all she sees is the desperation in his eyes. That's what happens when you stay present in someone's world after they've already walked out of yours. And that's why she's not texting back. Why she seems unbothered while you're drowning in confusion, because truthfully, you never actually left. You're still there, liking her posts, viewing her stories, leaving the door open in her inbox. You're not absent, you're available. And what she feels isn't loss, it's control. She doesn't sense your absence, she senses your longing. And as long as she can feel that, she won't miss you. She'll just feed on it. Let's call it what it is. Attention is currency. And every time you double text, respond instantly, or try to keep things civil, you're not earning anything. You're paying her ego in full. You're financing her emotional comfort while bankrupting your own self-respect. That's not love. That's addiction. That's emotional debt. And Stoicism doesn't do debt. Disappearing doesn't mean you erase your life or run from yourself. It means you take your energy back from places where it's being wasted. It means you stop performing for someone who has already made a silent but firm decision. You stop hoping that staying visible will make her change her mind, because it won't. But your absence just might. When she can no longer find you, when you stop orbiting her world and finally drift out of reach, something shifts. The roles reverse. Now, she's the one wondering. She's the one rewinding the past. She's the one reaching quietly and secretly, trying to find a trace of the man she used to take for granted. Because the most haunting emotion isn't rejection. It's uncertainty. And your silence, your distance, your refusal to keep feeding the emotional machine, that's what creates it. This isn't about getting her to miss you. This is about reclaiming what you've been handing over so freely. Your time, your attention, your value. She won't see your worth while she's still receiving it without cost. She'll only recognize it the moment it's gone. And once it is gone, and she finally feels that loss, she'll come face to face with something even more powerful than missing you. The realization that you've evolved without her. 5. Don't show her you've healed. Show her you've evolved. Healing is quiet. Evolution, even quieter. And the most powerful kind of transformation happens not when you're watched, but when you're forgotten, only to reemerge as someone unrecognizable. So don't aim to prove you're healing. She doesn't care. Healing sounds soft, like you're still patching the holes she left behind, like you're gently putting your heart back together, hoping one day she'll glance over her shoulder and applaud your progress. But real power doesn't beg for applause. It doesn't wait for recognition. It doesn't need to be seen to be real. You don't need to convince her that you've gotten better. You need to become someone she no longer recognizes. Someone she couldn't hurt today, even if she tried. Not because you're hiding the pain, but because you've outgrown the version of you that let her cause it. That's not just healing. That's rebirth. That's transformation through detachment, through discipline, through full dominion over your own mind. Stoicism teaches a brutal but liberating truth. You don't control what others feel. You only control what you choose to become. So you stop watching her story. You stop checking who she's with. You stop crafting silent narratives hoping she'll read between the lines. Instead, you grind. You rebuild emotionally, mentally, physically. You shape a life so fulfilling that her absence becomes irrelevant. You don't evolve to make her regret walking away. You evolve so you can be grateful she did. Because she didn't destroy you. She unveiled the man buried beneath the need to chase. She introduced you to the version of yourself who doesn't tolerate emotional scraps, the one who doesn't beg for clarity, the one who walks away with calm, with confidence, and never looks back. And that's what shakes her. Not your sadness, not your silence, but your progress. The moment she realizes you didn't just move on, you moved up. You didn't need closure. You didn't need revenge. You needed one reason to become unstoppable. And whether she meant to or not, she gave you that reason. So don't shout your growth. Let your silence speak it. Let your evolution destroy the version of you she thought she left behind. And as you rise quietly into your higher self, you'll discover a deeper truth. Emotional control isn't just strength, it's seductive power. Tasht 6. Emotional control is the ultimate seduction. There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, it doesn't flare up, it doesn't demand attention. It simply holds its ground, calm, steady, unshaken. And in a world addicted to drama and loud emotion, that kind of stillness, it becomes magnetic. You may think she wants the emotionally available guy, the one who pours his heart out, who cries on command, who lays his wounds bare like trophies of love, but not when she's the one who caused the bleeding. What stays in her mind, what she can't unsee, is the man who bleeds in silence, the man who doesn't beg, doesn't rage, doesn't fall apart, the man who doesn't perform his pain for pity or weaponize it for attention. That man haunts her. Because emotional control isn't just maturity, it's power. And in a society that rewards immediate reaction, it's also seduction. You want to live rent-free in her mind long after she's gone? Then don't show her pain. Show her progress. Don't show her chaos. Show her control. When she expects an explosion and gets stillness instead, her narrative breaks. Because silence, after betrayal, is unsettling. It's not the kind of silence that disappears. It's the kind that stares back at her, steady and unmoved. And that's the power she never anticipated. But here's what Stoicism gets right. Emotional strength doesn't come from suppression. It comes from precision. You feel deeply, but you choose when and how to respond. You process instead of performing. You break the pattern instead of playing into it. That's how you stop being a puppet pulled by her strings. That's how you stop reacting to her moves like you're still stuck on the board. Because eventually you do something radical. You flip the board. You leave the game entirely. And she's left playing with shadows, grasping at an opponent who no longer participates. She won't remember your words, but she'll remember that nothing shook you, that you vanished, evolved, and never once folded under pressure. That's what lingers. That's what seduces long after she thought she had the upper hand. Because when she no longer knows your next move, you become the one thing she can't control. And when control slips through her hands, a deeper emotion begins to take root. The regret that grows in the void you left behind. 7. The more you react, the more she rules. Think of a puppet on strings, moving, dancing, reacting. Not because it chooses to, but because someone else pulls the threads. That's what happens every time you let your emotions be controlled by someone who already walked away. Every time you lash out, every time you send a long emotional paragraph, every time you post something cryptic or fire off a double text, you give her power. Not because she earned it, not because she deserves it, but because she still owns your emotional center. And here's the hard truth. When someone owns your reactions, they own you. That's not love. That's submission. That's emotional slavery, dressed up in the costume of trying to fix things, of seeking closure, of fighting for love. But most men never learn this. The more emotionally unstable you are after she walks away, the more she knows she still has you. She knows she can return whenever she pleases. She holds the leash and you bark. And that bark, that's not just noise. That's confirmation. It tells her, I still have him. I still take up space in his head. He's still mine, even if I left. But you, not anymore. Because stoicism isn't coldness. It's not indifference strategy. It's choosing when to respond. It's choosing when to speak. It's choosing when to walk away without a trace. And sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. You don't rant, you don't chase, you don't explain. You become emotionally sovereign, unmoved, unshakable. She may try to test you. She may try to provoke, tempt, or bait you into breaking your silence. But all she meets is stillness. And that stillness, it's terrifying, because now the roles have reversed. Now she's the one reacting. She's the one obsessing over why she no longer has influence. Why she can't trigger the same emotion. Why she can't make you flinch or fold or fight for her like before. You've become a fortress. And she no longer has the map. Dark psychology understands this well. People crave control over those they believe they've hurt. It gives them comfort. It allows them to justify what they did. But when you deny them that control, when you don't respond, when you don't react, you force them to face the mirror. And that reflection, it's not always pretty. And once she's left to sit in that silence, in that loss of power, the seeds of regret begin to grow, quietly, deeply, in the space you used to fill. 8. Regret grows in the void you leave behind. Regret doesn't arrive in the heat of the moment. It doesn't crash in with anger or tears. It creeps in, slowly, quietly, like a cold wind slipping through a door you thought was shut. And it always waits until there's nothing left but silence. You see, regret doesn't strike her when you cry. It doesn't show up when you plead, explain, or ask her to come back. Those moments don't shake her. They center her. Because as long as you're trying, she knows you're still orbiting around her. But the moment you go silent, the moment you withdraw not just your words, but your presence, that's when regret begins to take root. Not because you punished her, not because you blocked her or made a dramatic exit, but because you quietly removed something she assumed she could always return to, your energy, your time, your emotional availability. Let's be clear, she expected you to linger, to chase, to hover like a satellite, revolving around her world without question. But when you didn't, when you vanished with no scene, no outburst, no emotional wreckage, something inside her cracked. Because silence isn't the same as distance. Distance means you're somewhere else. Silence means you're unreachable. And that kind of absence, it echoes. That's the power of Stoicism. It doesn't seek revenge. It creates space. And in that space, in that void, she's forced to face herself. She rewinds conversations, she romanticizes moments, she reinterprets your calmness as strength. And slowly she starts to realize you were rare. You didn't lash out, you didn't grovel, you simply stepped away and left her with the one thing most people avoid, the consequences of her choices. Here's what dark psychology understands clearly. People rarely grasp what they had until they experience life without it. When the comfort disappears, when the validation dries up, when the silence becomes so loud that it starts to drown out their justifications, that's when regret blooms. Not like a flame, but like a quiet, relentless ember. It doesn't scream, it smolders, fed not by your presence, but by the undeniable reality of your evolution without her. And when detachment becomes clarity, you'll find that letting go was never bitterness, it was wisdom taking form. 9. Detachment isn't hatred, it's clarity. There's a moment in every man's journey when the fog lifts. Not all at once, just enough for him to finally see her, not as he hoped she was, but as she truly is. And when that moment comes, the emotion isn't rage, it's not revenge, it's simply clarity. Detachment is not bitterness. It's not shutting down, going numb, or turning cold. It's the quiet decision to stop lying to yourself. To stop romanticizing the version of her that only existed in your imagination. To stop pouring your soul into a well that never gave you water. You don't detach because you hate her. You detach because, finally, you see her clearly, without the filters, without the fantasy, without the need to rewrite reality just to feel safe. And now that you've seen the truth, staying emotionally connected to her would feel like self-betrayal. Because detachment isn't about running away from love, it's about recognizing when something was never love to begin with. It's that moment when you stop needing closure because you realize nothing she says could change what's already been revealed. You stop needing revenge because hurting her won't heal you. And you no longer crave her understanding because your growth no longer depends on her awareness. You don't need her to see what she lost because you've discovered what you gained. Peace, mental clarity, emotional freedom. And once you've tasted those things, you can never go back to chaos just because it feels familiar. Stoicism isn't emotional anesthesia, it's emotional intelligence. It's choosing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And the moment you truly detached wasn't the moment you gave up. It was the moment you stopped bleeding for someone who never brought a bandage. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, that's growth. She might say you've changed. No, you've evolved. She might call you cold. You've simply chosen yourself. She may reach out again just to see if you're still hooked, just to test the leash. But what she'll find is a man who's no longer emotionally available to the same games, the same manipulations, the same outdated version of her, because you didn't detach out of spite. You detached out of self-respect. And that's what stings her most. Your indifference isn't an act, it's real. You don't miss her, you don't hate her, you see her, and what you see no longer moves you. And when you stop being moved by the past, you step fully into your power, which brings us to your final awakening. Shash 10, From Pain to Power, the Stoic Awakening. Every great transformation begins with a crack. Not in the world around you, but deep in the soul. The moment when pain stops simply hurting and begins shaping. That's the turning point. Not when she texts you back, not when she stalks your stories, not when she walks past you with a flash of regret in her eyes. No, your power doesn't come from her reaction. It begins the moment you stop needing it. When your hand no longer twitches toward your phone, when her name pops up and you feel nothing. Not hatred, not hope, just stillness. That's Stoic awakening. Because true power isn't pretending you never cared. It's feeling everything and still choosing not to flinch. You've been to hell. You've knelt in the ashes of who you were, shattered by someone who barely paused to notice. But you didn't stay there. You built from the rubble. You stopped asking, why did she leave me? And started asking, who am I becoming because of this? That shift, that one sacred, painful question, was the birth of your new self. Stoicism teaches this. You don't control the storm, but you can become the calm within it. And now, that's who you are. Not the man who waits, not the one who explains, not the one who chases, but the one who owns his mind, the one who has returned to himself, and in doing so, has evicted anyone who ever made him feel small. Because this journey, it's never been about revenge. It's not about being seen. It's not about her missing you. It's about walking out of the fire, head high, soul intact. It's about refusing to let someone else's confusion shake your foundation ever again. You were never weak, you were just invested in the wrong place. But now, you invest in you, daily, relentlessly, completely. You don't rise to prove anything. You rise because she couldn't destroy you. Because what was meant to burn you only refined you. This is real power. This is what Stoicism looks like, not in books, but in the blood and grit of real life. And when you finally arrived at this place, you realize you no longer need to speak to be heard. Your silence has already said everything. Because in the real world, not in fantasy, not in theory, your silence isn't weakness, it's power. And that is exactly why it shakes her to the core. Not because you played games, not because you turned cold or bitter, but because you remembered who you were when no one else was watching. When the noise faded, when she walked away, when all you had left was your own breath, your own reflection, and one defining choice. Would you break or would you build? And you chose to build, to rise, not for her, but for yourself. That's why you're here, watching, listening, not to win her back, but to reclaim the most powerful version of yourself. The calmest, the clearest, the one who no longer begs for validation but commands quiet respect simply by standing tall. She may never say she regrets it. That's okay, because she doesn't have to. Your silence already said everything. Your growth already echoes. And deep down, her soul already feels the truth that her pride refuses to say out loud. She lost something rare. A man she will never be able to replace. So let her go. Stay silent. Evolve in peace. And never again hand someone else the pen that writes your self-worth. Today we explored the Stoic path from heartbreak to healing. We exposed the illusion, reclaimed your power, embraced discipline, and learned how silence speaks volumes. You saw how absence echoes louder than any words, how emotional control, detachment, and stillness can turn pain into presence, and regret into your fuel for evolution. If this message stirred something in you, if you're ready to let your silence speak louder than anything you could ever say, then let this be your next step. Tap like if this resonated. Subscribe if you want more Stoic insight delivered with clarity. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a moment of your growth. And in the comments, drop it boldly. She lost me. I found me. Thanks for being here. This is Stoic Bridge, where silence isn't weakness, it's weaponry. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and remember, real power needs no permission. See you in the next one.